3 o'clock on this Thursday. Welcome aboard the Postgame show. Jay Phillips inside the Herndon Chevy Studios. Elijah Campbell at the Bon Secours Wellness Arena, downtown Greenville, South Carolina. Split show today for yours truly. Glad to be back after a few days away with the family. I had a celebrity sighting, not a politician, in Washington, D.C. For those of you of a certain age, you'll go, hey, cool. And the rest of you go, who? But I enjoyed it for the split second that I saw this person. I'll tell you about it in just a minute. Elijah is in Greenville, where South Carolina does indeed know tomorrow's opponent as they open play, do the Gamecocks in the women's event. It's Texas A&M tomorrow. Mr. Campbell will start there with what you saw as they took on and defeated Mississippi State. I guess either way, South Carolina would be heavily favored in tomorrow's game. If for no other reason, A, they're the best team in the country, and B, the team they play is going to be already playing on a little bit of tired legs, huh? We'll have more on this ball game throughout the course of the afternoon. Our good friend Brad Muller is on site. He'll be joining Elijah and me at 4:30 today. We'll get his take on what's going on with the Gamecocks this weekend. We do need to congratulate Coach Dawn Staley as the accolades continue to pour in, by the way. Amongst others, she was this morning named the Athletics National Coach of the Year. The Athletic, of course, the terrific sports website. So congratulations to Coach Dawn. Several of her players have been named all SEC first and second team. And I guess we got the news this week, too, that Tahina Paopao is going to come back to the ball club. So that's a big deal. Now Gamecock men's fans probably hoping that Michi tells us at some point here soon, Elijah, that he's going to come back. And speaking of Michi, his scoring stroke has returned. Didn't help the Gamecocks defeat Tennessee last night. Certainly helped as they beat Florida on Saturday. The Gamecocks falling last night 66-59. Elijah, you and I talked about last night's game earlier. And we'll come back around to more detail in just a second, so I'll just kind of set things up here. But I really did believe, by and large, that last night South Carolina did a good job of dictating the pace. And I told you to make an analogy to the women's team, it reminded me a bit of what we saw in Carolina women's games in Chapel Hill and Baton Rouge, where you could make a good case that the opponent set the pace. South Carolina was simply the better basketball team after 40 minutes. And perhaps that was in play last night, where South Carolina set the pace, but the Volunteers were just the better basketball team. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was one of the things. Tennessee just did a nice job of drawing contact, and it's something that South Carolina's game isn't really built on. They don't want to do it. We talked about sort of the irony of how many foul shots Carolina took in the heavy loss at Auburn. It's really, again, it was a byproduct more of how Auburn plays basketball than South Carolina. But, I thought last night was a good performance. Look, no moral victories, don't get me wrong here, but we talked about it a bunch, Elijah. When you look at this season series split between these two ball clubs, South Carolina's win in Knoxville, and I know you believe this too, really does remain one of the better road victories in all of college basketball this season. So there's still a lot to like about how you performed in both of these games against the Volunteers. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you and I did not talk about this morning. I personally, sorry, Gamecock fans, you know where my heart lies, but I did not think that the situation with Talon Cooper late was worthy of a foul. I think there was definitely contact. But Talon was fishing for it, and I think the officials knew that. Talon knows that. If it's a little bit different, or quite honestly, Elijah, again, I don't know how you feel. If you sell it a little bit better, maybe you get that call. Otherwise, I thought the lack of a whistle in that specific moment was the best decision for the officiating crew. Yeah, I do. Uh huh. Uh huh. Right. Yeah, and I kind of kid when I say this part, but with about a minute to go still, or however much time was left in that moment, the repeated chance of ref you suck might not help your cause if in just a few seconds you may have needed the ref again. Just my 2 cents. I might have let. But yeah, but And I understood why fans were frustrated. I think in the moment there, I do think the correct call was made, and I imagine a lot of folks who were disappointed in person inside the building may have gotten back home, seen that replay, and realized exactly why there was not a call. But we'll have more on basketball. Jack Veltry's going to join us at the bottom of the hour. He, like Elijah, was on hand last night. We'll get his take on that, plus a little bit going on around baseball. And we've got a lot of sound from Coach Paris and some of his players. So plenty more on that particular ball game. We'll talk more with Elijah as well about what's going on in Greenville with the SEC Women's Tournament now well underway. Got a few football notes to get to, including changes to National Signing Day. And I know, Elijah, you probably already talked about it this week. I've not yet had a chance to weigh in on the automatic bid discussion for the Big Ten and the Southeastern Conference. I'll save my opinion on that for a little bit later in the broadcast, but I do absolutely want to weigh in on it. And I found out today, because it was trending on Twitter, that Mike Tyson's going to fight some YouTube guy. Is that where we are now? Am I supposed to know who Jake Paul is, by the way? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Okay, good. Good. All right, thanks. Well, why? Okay, I did have kids. I did have kids that watched the Disney Channel like 10 and 15 years ago. So what would I know him from that? Oh. Oh, okay. Oh. Yeah, that's fair. All right. I don't think I'm going to watch this. So good luck to both is the best thing I'll say. Speaking of people that, if you're over 40, you probably know who I'm going to say here real quick. And I didn't get to meet the guy or get a picture or anything like that. But my family was in Washington for the last few days, and we were having lunch and strolling through the lovely Georgetown neighborhood in Western Washington. And the great George Will. Do you know who George Will is, Elijah? Yeah, see, there you go. Ed Bird knows who George Will is. A terrific political commentator. And yeah, not quite the same. Close. But George Will is a terrific political writer, TV pundit, and also a fantastic baseball writer. Sort of waxes philosophically about the national pastime on a regular basis. And he just happened to be walking right by us. And I looked at my wife and I was like, hey, wow, that was George Will. And it was pretty cool. And then he was gone. So, again, I don't want to make it sound like it was something great. If this was a David Letterman bit, then I'd give you the celebrity thing that happened afterwards where George Will pummeled me to the ground and told me not to look at him. But that didn't happen either. But I got to walk right by the great George Will, who I assume lives in Georgetown, which would make a whole lot of sense for people like him who live in D.C. So anyway, all right, more on my trip to D.C. later on, too, because I got to see three really played guitars by three legends at a new exhibit at the Smithsonian. So I'm very excited to talk about that as well. Jack Veltry coming up in about 15 minutes. Plenty more as Elijah's on the ground at the SEC Women's Tournament. You are listening to the Postgame Show.
just shows the competitor he is and how much of a great teammate he is. And, you know, he's just a great person at the end of the day. He just wanted to win it for the seniors and myself, so he's just a competitor.
That's Gamecock point guard Talon Cooper talking about the emotional Meechie Johnson last night. Meechie has definitely found his scoring stroke again. South Carolina, though, didn't get quite enough as Tennessee won the ball game at CLA last night in front of a sold-out crowd, 66-59, the final. In the process, Tennessee winning the outright Southeastern Conference Championship. It is the school's first outright title since 2008. They will be the number one seed, obviously, at the SEC tournament next weekend in Nashville. And they would like, as well, as I bring Elijah back in from Greenville, Elijah, to be a number one seed in the NCAA tournament, and that's why Saturday is so important. And let's jump right into that before we get a few more things from last night's ball game. I know a lot of you were saying, what does it take for Carolina to start their tournament on Friday, a week from tomorrow? And there are multiple scenarios out there, but I'm just going to give everybody the one that you're pulling for because it is absolutely, without question, the easiest possible way for South Carolina to start next Friday instead of next Thursday, and it is for Tennessee to beat Kentucky on Saturday in Knoxville. That is what you're pulling for. Whether you're mad at Tennessee last night or whatever else, or you just don't like Tennessee, or you don't like Orange, or any other reasons you can find to not muster support for the Volunteers, you're going to need to do it for a couple of hours on Saturday because the scenario that has Bama, Auburn, Kentucky, and Carolina winning their games on Saturday leaves South Carolina as the 5 seed, which means they would play on Thursday. In that scenario that I just described, Kentucky would win a larger tiebreaker statistic than just a simple head-to-head because you've got to measure how you did against everyone. And basically, Kentucky is 2-1 in that scenario to Carolina's 1-2 or something like that. There's a way to look at it and measure it. Kentucky gets the benefit of the doubt. And actually, I think, Elijah, in that scenario, Kentucky gets the 2 seed, which is interesting. But whether Carolina wins or loses on Saturday, if Kentucky loses, then the Gamecocks will start on Friday. So, again, Mr. Campbell, it's real simple. Pull for Kentucky to lose if you're a Gamecock fan. Right. Yeah. Well, Yeah, listen. Nothing surprises me, so I'm with you, and that it's more likely. By the way, the BPI gives Tennessee an 85% chance. I'm going to round up 85 to 15. Is the EBPI more or less favorable than 85% for the Volunteers? All right, all right, okay. Can Kentucky has won 4 in a row with the lowest number of points scored in that span, 91, in a 2-point win at Mississippi State. So they are not just coming in on a hot streak, but they are scoring an awful lot of points in the process. But again, Tennessee, having already wrapped up the Southeastern Conference Championship, does indeed have plenty to play for. So, again, there are other scenarios. And you may say, well, wait, why are you just telling me that the best thing is for Kentucky to lose and nothing else? Well, here's why. Alabama is hosting Arkansas, and Auburn is hosting Georgia. It will take Alabama and Auburn, slipping on multiple banana peels, and that's the really super kind way to put it. I'd like to say something else, but I can't. But it would take a monumental disappointment from either of those teams to not win in their home gyms on the last day of the regular season, Elijah. So, and again, if South Carolina beats Mississippi State and Kentucky beats Tennessee, you might say, well, again, the head-to-head, but the head-to-head between the two would not come into play at that point. But if both of them lost, then it would benefit South Carolina directly that they had the head-to-head. So, again, I just don't foresee any scenario happening for Carolina to get a top 4 seed without Kentucky losing on Saturday. I just don't see one. Yeah. We'll talk more about the Gamecock men's basketball team, let you hear from Coach Paris and get the words of our good friend Jack Veltri of Gamecock Central, who will also talk a little baseball with us. I'm Jay Phillips, downtown Columbia, and Elijah is on the concourse at Bon Secours Wellness Arena in downtown Greenville at the SEC Women's Tournament. This is the postgame show. Talking some Gamecock men's hoops after last night's difficult 66-59 loss. But again, a season split with the Tennessee Volunteers, who have just won the Southeastern Conference and may be on their way to a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. That could certainly depend on what they do with Kentucky, as we were just discussing, and how far Tennessee gets in the Southeastern Conference tournament next weekend. But for now, I think you got Tennessee kind of penciled in. Where will the Gamecocks be? We'll get into that and more as we welcome onto the program our buddy Jack Veltri on the beat covering Carolina athletics for Gamecock Central. Jay Phillips here in downtown Columbia. Elijah Campbell is live in Greenville covering the SEC women's tournament. Jack, always good to have you, bud. Let's go back to last night. Look, there's no moral victories right now. Elijah and I mentioned earlier there's a lot to like about how you played against Tennessee. The interesting thing is now, if you win on Saturday, it's good for you, obviously, going on the road against a team like Mississippi State, and yet it may not be enough to get them into next Friday's quarterfinal round of the SEC tournament. How do you look at this team taking what they've been doing well and having it travel one more game in terms of what it means for them come postseason play?
Yeah, thank you for having me on first off. But, yeah, last night, obviously not the kind of result you want if you're South Carolina. But there's always some positives to take away. And I think one place you can kind of start is the second half that South Carolina had in that game. Obviously, they got off to a kind of a slow start, only scoring 24 points offensively speaking in the first half. And it was a struggle, shooting the ball consistently and making baskets. And then Tennessee was obviously able to go coast to coast and kind of make some plays there in the paint. But, yeah, they played a lot better in the second half, and then it just wasn't enough in the end. I mean, you get it down to a three-point game with a minute to go, and you're thinking, okay, South Carolina's got a real chance to make it a game here and tie it up. And, Tennessee just continues to prove why they're, I think, in my opinion, going to be a national, top, number 1 seed in the country for the, March Madness. But looking ahead, I think, obviously you need to win Saturday. I mean, it's going to be a tough game going to Starkville against Mississippi State, a team that you played in the first game of SEC play. And I think South Carolina has got a real good chance to win this game, mainly because you saw guys like Colin Murray-Boyles barely play in that first matchup with these two teams. And, I mean, Stephen Clark was a starter back then, and B.J. Mack had, a rough day in that game. So a lot of things can go right for South Carolina heading into this matchup. But, I mean, even like you said, Jay, even if they win, it might not be enough, because I think you need Kentucky to also lose, which is very possible going to Knoxville, a team, or, Tennessee hasn't really lost much at home this year outside of South Carolina back in January. But I think you need Kentucky to lose in order to get a top 4 seed. And even then, I mean, who knows? It's, you really put yourself in a position where you need to rely on other teams to do other things to help you out. And that's never really a position you want to be in. I noticed one team that could definitely shoot the ball consistently well, and another that was just really struggling, especially from the outside. I mean, Tennessee was shooting 45% from behind the arc, at halftime, and then South Carolina was shooting 23%. So a lot of South Carolina shots in the early going were from the outside. They go 4 for 17. And, I mean, guys like Michi Johnson weren't hitting shots. Zach Davis was also struggling, but ultimately did make a 3. But it was just a very inconsistent effort in the first half in order to get points. And then you look at Tennessee. I mean, they didn't take a ton of threes in the first half. They decided to use the paint a little more, the inside game, with some of their guys on their team. And you also have to think about it this way. In that first matchup, think about it. Everyone besides Connect for Tennessee, really didn't play well that night. And then you see guys like Ziegler and some of their big men start to actually play well in the early going, and you're like, okay, these shots are falling that they didn't hit the first time around, and it might be a little bit of a tougher sledding moving forward in order to stop this team. And I think they did figure it out as the game went on, but by that point, it was just a little too late. And, you're looking back at this game, that first half, it really is what could have been had South Carolina played like they did in the second half the whole way through.
Talking to Jack Veltri on the beat for Gamecock Central. Let's switch over to baseball, sir. And after two very difficult one-run defeats at the hands of Clemson over the weekend, the Gamecocks have bounced back against some in-state, well, at least one in-state foe in the Citadel, and then Davidson, they're almost in-state, in a six-inning rain-shortened game last night. But let me ask you, Jack, has this team really gotten over those difficult losses to Clemson, their first and really only two close games of the year? How much of an impact has that had this week on this ball club, A? And B, where do you see them being able to get those fine margins back on their side of the ledger come conference play, considering they've only been in those two close games already?
Yeah, conference play. It's right around the corner. I mean, it's next weekend against Ole Miss, and it's coming up real quick. So South Carolina's got a lot of things to figure out on the baseball diamond. I think number one, you got to be able to hit with runners in scoring position.
Yeah.
That is far and away the biggest issue, in my opinion, right now. It's actually surprising coming into the season. We were all talking about, the offense is going to be, the main part of what they do this year, and it's the pitching that's going to be in question. Well, it's actually been a complete opposite so far this season, because I think the pitching staff, for the most part, has been pretty good. Obviously, you'd like to get some more length out of your starters, but I mean, when you turn the ball over to the bullpen, I think most of the guys in there have stepped up and pitched really well. But yeah, going back to the offense, I mean, it's getting time to where, in SEC play, some of these pitching staffs can really carve you up. South Carolina seems to strike out a lot and leave a lot of runners on base, so they've got to get it figured out rather quickly. But like I said, I think the pitching staff has been really good. And, I think these one-run games against Clemson were pretty tough. I think if you get one extra hit in both games, I mean, we're looking at maybe South Carolina ends up winning both those games, right? I think, the walk-off last Saturday in extra innings was the difference. And then on Sunday, that home run in the eighth inning given up by Roman Kimball kind of were the difference in both those games. And if you're South Carolina, you're just scratching your head at the fact that you went, I believe, 4 for 23 with runners in scoring position and 4 for 37 overall with any runners on base. And that's really where the issues lie right now. Well, it's definitely not Tennessee's arena, I will tell you that. It kind of confused me a little bit, if I'm being honest, because I think Roman Kimball's been pitching pretty well for this team. Like, yeah, he gave up 2 home runs against Clemson out of relief the other day, but for the most part, I mean, outside those 2 homers, he was looking really sharp. And I don't think it's far-fetched to say Kimball's been pitching better than Eskew. It's just something with Eskew about, he pitches really well the first time through the order, but then you get to the second and third time, and then I don't know what it is, specifically with Clemson and the series before that. He just hasn't looked that good. He gives up a walk or lets a few guys on base, and then it kind of just snowballs a little bit. And luckily, it hasn't gotten completely out of hand yet. I think it's all fixable. But yeah, right now, I don't know. I think right now on Sunday, you maybe look at starting maybe a guy like Matthew Becker. I'm not sure. Like I said, I think it just kind of confused me a little bit as to what's going on with Kimball. I mean, maybe there's an injury we just haven't heard about yet or something. Maybe they're going to piggyback him on Saturday with SQ like they did against Clemson. I'm not sure what the situation is, but it's definitely got more people, than myself just scratching their head about what's going to be the plan.
Jack, good stuff. Appreciate you, bud. We'll do it again soon. That is Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central, Jack T. Veltri on Twitter. Hey, you want to go to Sunday's game? Call Ed Berg right now, 803-404-6100, Carolina and Longwood, 803-404-6100, a pair of tickets to caller 5. Good luck. Welcome back in. 10 minutes in front of 4 o'clock on this Thursday. Jay Phillips in downtown Columbia in the Herndon Chevy Studios. Elijah Campbell is broadcasting live from the Bon Secours Wellness Arena in downtown Greenville at the SEC Women's Tournament. Ed Bird at Master Control. By the way, we have 2 more chances to win Sunday baseball tickets. So stay tuned throughout the afternoon. We'll be doing that for you a little bit later on. Elijah, right now, Tennessee up by 10, 56-46 over Kentucky. So, again, Gamecock fans hoping for something similar in the men's event at Thompson Bowling on Saturday afternoon. Tennessee needs this one. They played well here in Columbia to close out the regular season, even though it was a loss. This would give them 11 conference wins, but they're sitting on 17 overall. Very much a bubble team at this point are the Volunteers. They might need a deep run. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you. And Tennessee is currently 17-11 overall. They're 10-6 as we speak. Again, count this as a tournament victory. But you're right. I don't know how many bad losses you might say they have. They lost to a ranked FSU team, at least when they played. Ranked Indiana, ranked Notre Dame, ranked Ohio State. They did lose to Middle Tennessee, which is not a good loss for them. They lost at A&M, at Mississippi, at Alabama, twice to South Carolina, and they lost at home to LSU. So there's really not there's one bad loss on there, perhaps. And I know you're a Middle Tennessee guy, so, that's not a bad loss in your mind. But yeah. And that's not terrible. I mean, and some of the losses were bad. I mean, they have a few double-digit losses in there. But anyway, it's just interesting. But if Tennessee can maybe, get it done. And then tomorrow, help me out, Elijah, who would they see tomorrow? I don't have the schedule in front of me. Alabama. Okay, and Alabama's won, 21 games, I think, 22 games, something like that. So, yeah, but same record in conference play, whatever that might be worth. Alabama doesn't have as difficult a schedule as Tennessee does, but that one's kind of interesting. But Tennessee up 11 points, 6.5 minutes to play in the ball game as the afternoon session begins to wind down. Thanks again to Jack Veltri for joining us. And coming back around to that for just a second, Elijah, it's troubling right now. South Carolina's runners in scoring position or batting average with men on base, either way you look at it, both numbers are very concerning. Carolina, 4 of 37, I think, with runners in scoring position, or at least with men on base. The team has left 144 men on base in 13 games. I mean, that's well over 10 per game. They're getting them there. That's good. But you've got to bring them home, and at least with some greater regularity. And it was certainly a concern for them this weekend. And, Bill Gunner and I were doing our Cocktail Hour television program for Gamecocks Plus this morning, and I thought Bill made a great point, Elijah, when he said at some point these kids have to understand you're a big-time D1 baseball player. You got to do your job. Yeah. Lots more to do around the baseball team. Carolina basketball to discuss. We'll talk women's basketball with Brad joining Elijah up in Greenville. Got some college football notes to get to as well. You're listening to the Postgame Show. 4 o'clock on this Thursday. Welcome back in. It's the second hour of the postgame show. Jay Phillips, downtown Columbia's Herndon Chevy Studios, will rejoin Elijah Campbell in just a few from Bon Secours Wellness Arena in Greenville, where game 2 of the day is about to wrap up. Tennessee now comfortably ahead of Kentucky. The Gamecocks already know their opponent for tomorrow's opening game of the quarterfinal round. It'll be Texas A&M. And, again, Tennessee will take on, I assume it will be Tennessee, who's up now 13 and at the free throw line with 3.5 minutes to play. But Tennessee, the winner of this game, will take on Alabama. Let's put it that way. I mean, hey, Kentucky could make a big comeback. I don't think they will, but they could. But as we speak, 67-54 Volunteers as they look to hold on to a place to try and get into the NCAA tournament. Last night, Tennessee was in town. Let me say again, for those of you just tuning in, there are a few scenarios. The deeper I go, the more confusing they could get. Here's the thing. This is in terms of South Carolina's men's basketball team starting their SEC tournament next Friday as opposed to a week from today. South Carolina, and let me go back to the standings to try to get this in as easy a terms as I possibly can. South Carolina at this point in time is in a 4-way tie with Auburn, Kentucky, and Alabama, all for the second best record in conference play. Tennessee, as you now know, last night won the outright conference championship. So Tennessee is the SEC champion. Tennessee will be the number 1 seed in the tournament. Carolina, Auburn, Kentucky, and Alabama are all 12-5. Carolina is at Mississippi State. Kentucky is at Tennessee. Auburn hosts Georgia. Bama hosts Arkansas. Auburn and Alabama are heavy favorites in their game. And honestly, at least for the purposes of looking at the BPI, I don't know about I haven't seen. There's no line on these games yet from Vegas, but Carolina and Kentucky are pretty heavy underdogs in their games. If Auburn or Alabama do lose, then yes, that could benefit South Carolina as long as South Carolina wins. But here's the thing, y'all. Let's try to look at it from a bigger discussion standpoint and be a little more realistic about it. Auburn and Alabama are going to win, okay? Let's go into it believing that. That's a whole lot easier. And that's why I say I don't want to confuse you with too many different scenarios. Gamecock fans, you want one outcome. Really, the most important outcome isn't even your own. In terms of starting on Friday, in terms of being a top 4 SEC team at the end of the regular season, you need Kentucky to lose on Saturday. That's it. Because it doesn't matter at that point what Carolina does. Now, you'd like Carolina to beat Mississippi State, and Carolina-Mississippi State will be winding down as Tennessee and Kentucky tip from Knoxville. Carolina's game's at 2:30. The UK-UT game is at 4. Again, you'd like Carolina to win because that helps your seeding in the national tournament. It's a road win against a team that's on the bubble perhaps, but should be on the good side of it at this point in time. State is 8-9 overall, but they're 19-11. They've got a good net ranking. They've got a good strength of schedule. You beat them. You've done a nice thing. That said, if you lose and Kentucky loses, then the tiebreaker is simply the head-to-head, because otherwise it gets into all of this who played whom and who did what, and really that's why Carolina would be a 5 seed, because they would have the worst combined head-to-head of those teams that they're grouped up there with. So even though they do have the head-to-head against Kentucky, Kentucky's got a better overall record against those other teams. And like I say, I don't want to sit here and get into the nitty-gritty. Just make it real easy. Carolina fans, you need Kentucky to lose. That's it. You'd like to win your game, but it really doesn't matter, because Bama and Auburn aren't going to lose. I think the only way, like if Bruce Pearl decided, hey, you know what, today I'm just going to put 3 guys on the floor the whole game, then maybe Arkansas could beat them. Maybe. Or excuse me, Georgia could beat them. And then same thing with Arkansas at Alabama. If Nate Oates said, hey, guys, I want you to dribble backwards for at least a half and see what happens. Maybe Arkansas has a chance in Tuscaloosa. So I'm being facetious to make a point here. It really, the only outcome that really matters in terms of Carolina being top 4 is the Kentucky game. And if Kentucky wins, even if Carolina wins, they're on the outside looking in. So I hope I didn't confuse you too much. But that's what we're looking at here. So, but, look, I thought last night, I've said this already today, and I'm sure we'll mention it again, but I thought Carolina did a nice job by and large of dictating the pace. But Tennessee is very good, y'all. They're very good. And what I hope more than anything is that this shows that Carolina can play with a ball club like this. Look, you beat them in their gym, and they beat you in your gym. In both games, South Carolina, played very well defensively. Last night, Tennessee played much better defensively. And that was a big difference, especially early. And really, I'm not saying this is the difference in the game, but that late run that Tennessee went on to end the first half, that made a big difference. Carolina was in this thing. It was tight. It was ugly at times in the first half. But, Carolina was hanging around, only down like 4 points at one point there, and then Tennessee just went on a quick little spurt and made it an 11-point game. That Carolina managed at the point they did with less than 2 minutes to play to cut the game to 3 is a real testament to how well the Gamecocks can play at times. And I'm not trying to say moral victory. I'm not. You lost the basketball game, and you know why. I think also Tennessee did a good job of drawing contact, getting into the lane, doing what they want to do, and that made a big difference for them. Carolina only took 10 foul shots. Tennessee made 19 of their 22. If you only want to look at that statistic and say that was the difference in the game, then certainly, there you go. You lost by 7 points, and Tennessee made 14 more foul shots than you. You do the math. I don't think that was exclusively it, though. But I thought South Carolina, look, neither team shot well last night. I think both teams shot under 36%, if I'm not mistaken. I'll go back to the box score and find it to be absolutely certain. But let's see. Tennessee 35.7%. Actually, Carolina 38.3%. So Carolina did, so right around 38%. But Tennessee made 35% of their three-pointers. Carolina just 28% of theirs. And, again, the Gamecocks only made 5 free throws to Tennessee's 19. Everything else, by and large, kind of even, kind of. Tennessee, a couple more steals and a couple more assists. The Gamecocks had a couple more rebounds. And, Tennessee's just a really good basketball team. Dare I say a better basketball team, which is what makes the win in Knoxville very impressive for Carolina. It's the single biggest win on their resume. There's no question of that. And you showed last night that you can play with those guys again, which is good because there were a lot of people, I'm sure, that felt like Tennessee would come in here and really want to take it to South Carolina. And the Gamecocks didn't allow that to happen. But to come back around to it, again, the easiest way for South Carolina to make the quarterfinal round, their opening round of the SEC tournament next week, is for Kentucky to lose in Knoxville. It really is that simple. Ed Bird, if I may, sir, real quick here for you. Let me get y'all a little bit of sound. Cut 23, Ed. Cut 23 on our list today. This is Coach Parris's post-game assessment of what Carolina did last night.
Well, not a lot to say, really, other than our effort was incredible. I feel bad for our guys. They wanted to win so badly, but incredible effort against a really good team. They're conference champs. You don't accidentally fall into that status. but I thought we had some chances. I thought it wasn't for lack of effort. That was for sure. We played really, really hard. We wanted to win badly. It wasn't our day in some ways, and then we compounded that with a couple of things. I think we'll look back and there'll be, 4 or 5 things that we had a lot of control over that the play didn't turn out our way, and it yielded points for them because of something that we could have controlled. But they have a good team. They have an experienced team, vets, tough, prolific scorer, at least one. I don't want to minimize anyone else's contributions on their side of the ball, but at least one prolific scorer, and it just was. It's hard. It's a hard thing to just wrap your mind around when you got the guys in the locker room that are hurting like that. But sun will come up tomorrow, and we got a lot that we're still playing for. Still more milestones that are out there for us. A lot of them are already in the rearview mirror. And I joked around with him. I said the SEC just wasn't quite ready for us to do all that and end up being first place in the league. So we'll have to settle for something else. But it was a great effort by our guys and their guys too. It was a good basketball game, and just came up short.
Yeah, it was. Again, and you talk about guys hurt. We played a cut earlier from Talon Cooper. Michi Johnson put out an emotional statement last night about how he was hurting for the seniors on the team. Talon, you could tell, was not in a good place right after the ball game because you did play hard. You did. I think you gave it what you could. Tennessee's better than you. I think Tennessee was better than you when you beat them in Knoxville. Tennessee's going to be a 1 seed, it feels like. And again, that's why Saturday is so important for Tennessee, I might add. So let me come back around to that point as we continue to blend those topics in. You may think that Tennessee, having won the outright championship last night, may say to themselves, all right, we're good. We're good. Everything now is kind of gravy. No, it's not. Tennessee is in a group of schools that could absolutely still be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. And it will take, I think, beating Kentucky on Saturday. I don't know that they have to go and win the conference championship, the tournament championship, to secure a 1. I think you could probably beat Kentucky and maybe get to Saturday, or certainly. So I think if Tennessee were to beat Kentucky this weekend and get to Sunday, whether they win or lose the SEC tournament, I think you've probably done enough at that point, but I don't know. I'm not Joe Lunardi. I'm not Jerry Palm. I don't have enough in me on that one. But Lunardi's got him penciled in as a 1 after last night. But you go lose to Kentucky at home, and then say lose the opener next weekend, you're probably not a 1 anymore. I think that math is also very easy to do. So there's a lot for Tennessee to play for. But the Gamecocks played well. They didn't win. That happens. And especially defensively, they played well. You'd like to do a little bit more offensively, but those are the limitations that you have from time to time. They settled for a couple of bad shots at times. I thought, and I know a lot of you were really upset last night in the gym with the Talon Cooper call, or non-call, if you will. I thought the right call was made there. I thought that was the right decision by the official not to blow his whistle. Talon was fishing for contact. There was contact. You got to maybe sell it a little bit better or take the shot a little differently if you're going to draw the opportunity to get to the line. And, again, a lot of you in real time at the ball game disagreed. We can all hear the chants, right? But maybe if you've gone back and seen the replay, you understand why the officials did what they did. We'll have more from Coach Paris on the other side of the break. Still got a chance for you later this hour to win another pair of Sunday baseball tickets, and we'll talk to Brad Muller and Elijah from Greenville as the SEC Women's Tournament is underway. This is the Postgame Show. All right. So good. Good. All right. Here we go. All right. 30 seconds. Do I need to say who I am or anything, or just say who's the traffic brought to you by WIS? All right. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, from the WIS Traffic Center, let me get you a little bit of what's going on this afternoon across the capital city. We've got an accident at Highway 1 at Pisgah Church Road, Park Lane at Two Notch. Oh, that'll be a lot of fun for you to get through on this time of day. Garner's Ferry at Hallbrook as well. We'll keep you updated on what's going on, and y'all know the major arteries. Be careful out there. Partly cloudy and 72 right now in the capital city. All right, welcome back into the postgame show on this Thursday afternoon. Jay Phillips with you here in downtown Columbia. Elijah will rejoin us in just a few from Greenville. Brad Muller, the voice of Carolina women's basketball, will join us on the guest line coming up inside of 15 minutes. By the way, speaking of the SEC women's tournament, it has gone final 76-62. The score, Tennessee beating Kentucky. So, boy, the Vols get their rivals in this one. They take on Kentucky today. And they've got Alabama in the quarterfinal round tomorrow. South Carolina, if you have not heard, will take on Texas A&M, who earlier today beat Mississippi State. By the way, that pregame is here tomorrow, 11:30. Tip-off just after 12 o'clock. Baseball tomorrow night, by the way, against Longwood will air at 6:45. Later this hour, the second of three opportunities to win Sunday tickets for Carolina baseball. Speaking of Carolina baseball, Go to 1075thegame.com, register for the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. Every game, they put 25 more bucks right into the pot. Big pot. And if a Gamecock hitter hits a Grand Slam home run, you could win all of the cash in that pot, which right now I am told stands at $275. So good luck. And go to 1075thegame.com to register for that. Spending some time talking about Carolina men's basketball. Carolina falling last night 66-59. If you've just tuned in and you're wondering about, again, the different scenarios for the SEC men's basketball tournament next week, again, I'm going to give you the easiest outcome for Carolina this weekend so that they can finish in the top 4. You need Kentucky to lose. That's it. You need Tennessee to beat Kentucky in Knoxville, which I think is very doable. Earlier, cut 27, Ed, if you don't mind, please, sir, cut 27 on our list. You heard Coach Paris in the last segment talking about some of the milestones that his team could still achieve. Here he is talking about his ball club chasing said milestones.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's still so many milestones in building. You know, I don't know when the last time we got a Mike debates might know the last time we got the double bye.
2017.
Okay.
Final 4 year.
Okay, great. And then before that, I wonder what it was. So my only point is it's hard to do. A lot of teams don't get it. I know as I look back into history, we haven't gotten it a lot. And so there's something to play for that you want to achieve. It's a big achievement, and it helps your chances to win the conference tournament. Another achievement if you can get that done. So there are so many things that are out there for. So you ask what if there's a part of me. I mean, all of me is excited about that. Every last drop. And so there's so many things that are experiences that these guys are going to always remember. They're always going to remember, one, I think just what this team was about and how they feel about the guys that were in the locker room. They're never going to forget that. I know that for a fact. But then there's all these other things, the ability to play in the NCAA tournament. And so to have a role to help provide that for, not only our fans and our community and our alums and all the former players, all that stuff, but for the guys that are in the locker room, man, what a rewarding, what a motivating factor to do, some of the things that aren't the most glamorous thing in this job, but you do it for the guys and then to see how they react emotionally and want to win so badly, it's a special. It doesn't always come together that way. I'm telling you, it doesn't.
Coach Lamont Paris last night, again, 66-59, the final. Carolina 24-6, 12-5 overall. Ed, one more, if you don't mind here, please, sir. Cut 26. Lamont talked in an earlier cut that we had about how the guys were hurting. You wanted to win on senior night. You wanted to beat a top 5 team for the second time in the same season. How do they keep perspective with so much ahead of them after a loss like that?
An evaluation from further away from it, from a mile away. And but these guys want to win. They care a lot. They care a lot about each other. They wanted to play really well for the seniors also. The building is exactly what's happening here. That was my mission when I came here, was to build and not to sprinkle some sort of magic fairy dust over the top of this whole thing and make it instantly good. And then who knows what next year will look like. And it was to build. And I don't know if anyone talked about a lot of the analogies that I made last year had to do with building a house. And that when you're building a house, and you're building the house to live in that house, and you want it to be a really solid house, your foundation is up to code. Your insulation is the thickness that it's supposed to be. That's when you're building it to live in it. When you're building it to sell it, all it's got to do is look good. And no one cares if it's warm in there in the wintertime or not. You've sold it already. And so building has been my whole part of my process since I've been here. And we're still building. We're still building. But it's nice to see that, at some point when you look at the thing and the drywall's hung and you can say, oh, that looks like a bedroom. I see where that's going. and then one day there's paint on the walls and it's still not all the way there, but it looks like a house. And you already know that behind the drywall is the proper amount of insulation. You already know that under the floor is the exact type of foundation that you want to have. You already know all that stuff, even though at this point you can't even see that. So we're building, we will continue to build, but I like where we're at. It's solidly built. What we have right now, it's solidly built. And that's a humongous success, especially in 2024, where we're trying to microwave everything that we can microwave. And so I take a lot of pride in the fact that we have selected the right people as those foundational pieces, and that it's coming to fruition.
Good stuff from Coach Paris. And, that's how you keep perspective, he says. Know that what you've done is working and build toward it. Carolina, again, no line on the game yet, at least from where I've checked. But the BPI gives Carolina only about a 25% chance to beat Mississippi State. Now, they've done it once already here in Columbia early in the season. And as Jack Veltri pointed out to us about an hour ago, this Carolina team is very different from that Carolina team that did win that game. Remember, I believe that was the opening game of the conference slate, if I'm not mistaken, now that I think back on it, or at least right up there near it. But this Carolina team, has a fully healthy and operational, if you will, Colin Murray-Boyles. We've seen Zach Davis really starting to come around of late. Yeah, that Mississippi State game was the opener for the conference. It feels like a long time ago, a 68-62 win. So you like, and look, and the BPI takes a lot of things into account that maybe aren't even there for South Carolina anymore. So we'll get Elijah to give us the eBPI, if you will, a little bit later on. Timeout here. Come back on the other side. We'll go back to Greenville for Carolina women's basketball talk. The voice of Carolina women, Brad Muller, joins us for his regular Thursday visit. They know who they've got tomorrow to open their SEC tournament. We'll talk with Brad about that and more as the postgame show continues. All right, from the WIS Traffic Center, let me get you a little bit of what's going on this afternoon across the capital city. We've got an accident at Highway 1 at Pisgah Church Road, Park Lane at Two Notch. That'll be a lot of fun for you to get through on this time of day. Garner's Ferry at Hallbrook as well. We'll keep you updated on what's going on, and y'all know the major arteries. Be careful out there. Partly cloudy and 72 right now in the capital city. Time to talk a little Carolina women's basketball. They will get their tournament underway tomorrow at noon. Actually, the guy that we're getting ready to talk to will be on the air with you starting at 11:30. He is the voice of Carolina women's basketball. Our good friend Brad Muller here for his regular Thursday visit. How are you, sir? How's the mood around this ball club now that, dare I say, the real work for what they want to do starts tomorrow? I want to talk about, if you don't mind, real quick, the emotional contingent from this past weekend with Dawn bringing members of Camila Cardoso's family up from Brazil. It certainly seemed to not only give Camila a big boost, but it looked and felt as if the team was just genuinely touched by that. Brad, give us, for somebody that knows this program as well as you do, what did that mean to them? Was it an unexpected pleasure? She was named first team all-conference. I think Raven and Tahina and Ashlyn were second team. Coach has been named the conference, and at least by one publication, The Athletic, the national coach of the year. So the accolades are there, Brad, but they're not going to care too much about that. That being said, when you look at this team right now as it's built for the next round, the postseason round, give us your take on how different it feels for these young ladies relative to last year when they were also undefeated going into postseason play. Talking to Brad Muller, Carolina and Texas A&M tomorrow at noon. I meant to bring that up here, and I will start to do that for you now. Of course, the Gamecocks have beaten everybody in conference play. In fact, everybody on their schedule so far this year. But tomorrow at noon, tip-off for the quarterfinal round, the Gamecocks and the Aggies. Before we get into that and a little bit of your scouting report, we did also get news that Tahina Paupau is coming back, Brad, for next season. So she'll look to want to do big things in the SEC and national tournament. But what kind of lift is that as you begin to project forward? Last week, we talked with you about bench players getting significant minutes, especially in a game like the one against Kentucky, where obviously you were playing an overmatched opponent, but still, Dawn, if you will, my term here, Brad, getting their sea legs under them because bench rotation is so vital, and this team is so deep, so talented. So as you begin to look to this weekend, take us through what you've seen in the past and what you think it looks like in terms of what Dawn wants to do with her bench, not only this weekend, but then you get a long break before the national tournament begins. Yeah. I'll be careful here, Brad. Last thing for you. Got about a minute and a half left. A&M tomorrow. Should you win, you'll get the winner of Tennessee, Alabama. So take us through these first couple of days of the tournament. we'll see how it goes. Again, Brad on the call tomorrow morning, 11:30 is the pregame show with tip-off just after noon, the Gamecocks and Texas A&M as South Carolina looks to win their 30th basketball game of the season. Always appreciate you. Have a great call this weekend. We'll talk soon. You bet. That is Brad Muller. And again, follow Brad for all that he's doing up in Greenville, SC Brad 92. Would you like to go to Sunday's Carolina Longwood baseball game? Sunday's game. I've got a pair of tickets for caller 5, 803-404-6100. Caller 5. You're going to Sunday's game. Good luck. Be right back. All right, 11 minutes in front of 5 o'clock on this Thursday. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay Phillips here in downtown Columbia. We'll rejoin Elijah from Greenville in the Bon Secours Wellness Arena. He is up there covering the SEC Women's Tournament. Tennessee has just beaten Kentucky in the second game of the day. Before that, as you just heard Brad Muller tell us, A&M beating Mississippi State. That's who the Gamecocks have tomorrow, A&M. And should they beat the Aggies, which we expect, then they'll get the winner of the Tennessee-Alabama game, which will be played in this mid-afternoon time slot tomorrow. Want to get into a couple of things around college football. Again, for those of you who do listen routinely, I've been away the last few days with my family, some of my girls on spring break. So I haven't had a chance to talk about this, and I don't know how much Elijah got into it while I was gone, but as many of you know now, we're going to the 12-school college football playoff for the next couple of seasons. The leadership is already talking about expansion beyond 12 to 14 or 16. Feels like 14 is a number they like for at least 2026. And I think it's because they still want to build in some form of first-round buys, which I understand. Again, you need those kind of rewards, dangle those carrots for the regular season. So I get it. I'd prefer 16 if you're going to expand again. Again, let's at least give 12 a chance to work before they want to expand. But whatever. I'm here for 16. But one of the things that's been floated is the idea of the champions of the Big Ten and Southeastern Conference getting those top two spots regardless. That's a terrible idea, in my opinion. I realize I cover an SEC school and that the bulk of what I do in covering college football is the Southeastern Conference. But I'm not going to sit here and cheerlead, y'all. This is a bad idea. Earn it. This is really simple. You have a long regular season. You have a conference championship game. Earn it. This notion that because, and I can't tell you for sure this is what they're saying, but this notion that because you, the Southeastern Conference, and you, the Big Ten Conference, bring in more money, therefore you're deserving of bypassing something. I just don't like it. And perhaps like so many things in life, politics and sports and public policy and all these things, you float these trial balloons and you see how people react. I'll be honest with you. I've not done a whole lot of research to find out how people are reacting. I can certainly imagine that if you are a fan of a school in the ACC or Big 12, that you're not at all in favor of this. We know it can't be Notre Dame based on what these new bylaws are saying because you've got to win a conference in order to be one of the top 4 seeds anyway. Notre Dame is perfectly fine with not being in a conference. Therefore, they know the best they can do in any given year is 5th. But to just say, well, regardless of record or whatever else, we're the biggest, so we're going to get these, and the rest of y'all can just kind of fall in line. I mean, would you sign up for that? I wouldn't. Maybe you would. I don't know how a lot of y'all feel on this. We'll gauge more of this as these things become more concrete. And again, this could well be a trial balloon, and you find out that it's going to sink quite quickly to the ground and be absolutely nothing, which is kind of what I hope. But this notion that you just deserve the top 2 because of who you are, I can't get behind that. I really can't. Brett Yormark says, he's the commissioner of the Big 12, he said we're looking at numbers. They're talking about how a certain model might fit where, depending on the league you're in, you get more or less, direct spots. Here again, I don't know if we need that. I mean, at that point, while I can figure that you're probably getting what we would call a legitimate national champion, what if there is one of those years? I don't know. Let's look at, and I know it's not apples to apples, but Fresno State won the College World Series about 15 or so years ago, 20 years ago. Coastal Carolina won the College World Series, in 2016. Those are outliers, but they still did it. Is there somebody like that? Look, I'm not predicting that, suddenly Coastal's going to win the football title or James Madison or something like that. But what if they're having a hell of a year? Go win your games. I mean, for all the people that have said regular season, you got to earn it, undefeated and all this kind of stuff, I don't like it. So hopefully that particular facet of this does not pass. Headlines of the day, drive around the SEC, more from Greenville, and a chance to win baseball tickets. Coming up. All right, from the WIS Traffic Center, let's see what's going on around Greater Columbia. Gervais at Millwood, not too far from us. Also, very heavily traveled intersection any time of day, so please be careful down there. Highway 1 at Pisgah Church Road, that one's still being worked on. Kaiser at Mission Way. Just a couple of blocks away from us, Lady Street at Assembly. Again, that's going to cause some backup. Park Lane at Two Notch also still being worked on at last check. So a few busy intersections having some trouble. Cloudy and 70 right now in downtown Columbia. All right, time for the headlines of the day, brought to you by Integrated Media as well. Welcome back in. Jay Phillips in downtown Columbia's Herndon Chevy Studios. We'll rejoin Elijah from Greenville coming up in just a few minutes' time. We'll start with Carolina men's basketball falling last night to Tennessee. The final score, 66-59. The Gamecocks 24-6 on the regular season, now 12-5 in conference play. Both teams, played a very strong defensive game. I don't think there's any question about that. South Carolina last night just didn't have enough when it counted, especially at the end of the first half. I thought that was a really difficult stretch where Tennessee just played better than you. But overall, I thought both teams strong defensively. Carolina, let's round up. Carolina held Tennessee to 36% shooting. The Vols held Carolina to 38% shooting. One of the big differences from an offensive standpoint for the two clubs is that Tennessee got to the line 22 times and made 19 of them. South Carolina got to the line just 10 times, only made 5. Not telling you that's what I think the difference is, but in a game where you have a 14-point discrepancy in free throw shooting and you lost by 7, you can see how much of a difference that made. Last night, Carolina was led by Michi Johnson in 30 minutes. He scored 18 points, grabbed 5 boards, had 3 assists. Good night for him, I thought, overall. Talon Cooper, not great last night. Offensively, 4 of 10 overall. 3 of 8 from 3 is pretty good, actually, for Talon. Again, a lot of you mad about the call that didn't go his way, but you got to, if you go back and look at the replay, that was the right decision, in my opinion, by the official. Talon had 8 boards last night, 2 assists, 11 points in 36 minutes played. No real bench play to speak of. Jacoby Wright, Miles Studi each had more than 20 minutes, but only a combined 7 points for them. And B.J. Mack was off last night. I thought Tennessee did a nice job of defending him in 25 minutes, just 8 points for B.J., but he was 2 of 4 from 3. He only had 2 rebounds last night. So, it's not a terrible loss by any stretch of the imagination. You want to win for obvious reasons because you want to win every game you play. And, yes, you had beaten Tennessee in their gym. But, there's still a lot ahead for South Carolina. Cut 22 here, Ed. This is Coach Lamont Paris last night on just picking themselves up. 22. Sorry. All right, cut 22 is what we're going to play here for you.
I mean, we just got to play. We got to just go to the next thing and play. We're still playing for. If we win, I think we guarantee ourselves a double bye. I don't know how many times that's happened. I told these guys there's still significant milestones out there, and that's only superseded by all the milestones that we've already achieved with this particular group. But it's nice that you still have some out there. I told them that maybe the SEC wasn't ready for us to be the regular season champs yet, so we'll have to put that on hold and hope to get it back together and go to Nashville and play well and maybe we'll end up being the SEC conference tournament champs. So, but you just got to go to the next thing. You got to just get to the next thing and get ready to play again when you're still playing for plenty.
All right, so I've done this before. I'm going to try to break it down for you again. Honestly, the simplest way for South Carolina to get the double bye and start in the quarterfinal round a week from tomorrow is for Kentucky to lose on Saturday at Tennessee. Here's why. Right now, Carolina, Alabama, Auburn, and Kentucky are all 12-5. Again, Tennessee last night won the outright conference championship. No one can tie them. They will be the 1 seed. They are the regular season SEC champion. Should those 4 teams I just mentioned to you all win, Carolina, Auburn, Bama, Kentucky, then they'll all be 13-5. And then you get into a very convoluted tiebreaker system that would negate Carolina's head-to-head win over UK, because Kentucky would have a better record overall against those teams. And that's where it gets – I'm not even going to get into that part of it for you. Just trust me, from that perspective, should all those things happen and those 4 teams win, Carolina, Kentucky, Bama, and Auburn all win, Carolina's the 5 seed. Kentucky's actually the 2 seed. Here's the difference from that. Bama hosts Arkansas. They're heavy favorites. Auburn hosts Georgia. Auburn,
I got you, buddy.
Heavy favorites. Kentucky and South Carolina are actually pretty heavy underdogs on the road. Kentucky is in Knoxville. Carolina is in Starkville. Now, Carolina has already beaten Mississippi State once, but it was the first game of the year, in conference play at least. So you're kind of looking at 2 different teams. But if Kentucky loses, it doesn't matter what Carolina does.
We're learning about this together.
So Carolina wants to win for national seeding purposes, for resume strengthening and things like that. But quite honestly, unless Kentucky loses, doesn't matter if Carolina wins or not. So I'm not telling you, Gamecock fans, don't worry about pulling for them. Yeah, you want them to win. But you need Kentucky to lose.
Let Jay know you're here.
That's the simplest way to do it, because I just do not foresee a scenario where Auburn loses to Georgia in Auburn and where Alabama loses to Arkansas in Tuscaloosa. Now, if it happens, it happens. But you want to know how to make it easy? You pull like heck for Tennessee to beat Kentucky. And Tennessee still has plenty to play for, despite having won the SEC championship in the regular season. They really do. They can have a national 1 seed still very much in play. They're penciled in for it today. But let's just give you an example. If Kentucky were to beat them and say Tennessee loses next Friday, Tennessee's not a 1 seed nationally anymore. So they need this one. This strengthens their cause. But that's the easiest way. And by the way, if Carolina, as I said, I think I said this, if Carolina and Kentucky were to both lose on Saturday, Carolina then does get the benefit of the head-to-head with Kentucky, assuming that Alabama and Auburn do win their games. So I know it's confusing at times, but really it's real simple. That's why I'm saying it's real simple in the grand scheme. Pull for Kentucky to lose. And then it doesn't really matter what Carolina does in Starkville. So there's that for you. Women's basketball, Dawn Staley's club does start their SEC tournament tomorrow up in Greenville. Many of you will be heading up there. The Gamecocks will be taking on Texas A&M. Brad Muller joined us earlier from Greenville and felt that the A&M victory over Mississippi State was a bit of an upset because State is a bubble team that could really have used this. A&M is not going to the national tournament unless they win this event this weekend, and I don't really envision them winning 4 straight games, including having to beat South Carolina tomorrow. Gamecocks will be heavily favored against A&M. That game will be airtime of 11:30 with a tip time of just past 12 o'clock. Getting into some other headlines of today for you, brought to you by Integrated Media. So I saw that Mike Tyson was fighting. And now I've seen this guy's face, and I'm like, oh, okay, I just wouldn't have put the name together. Jake Paul. Again, as Elijah told me earlier, if you're under 40 and you watch a lot of YouTube stuff, Jake Paul is I don't know what kind of YouTube stuff he does. They just call him a YouTuber. But he's going to fight Mike Tyson in a Netflix exclusive on July the 20th. It's going to be held at Jerry World. It's a whole card. It's the main event. It's Netflix's official first kind of jump into combat sports. It's the 3rd live sporting event that Netflix has had overall. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, according to a statement, is a once-in-a-lifetime dream matchup. And I anticipate it will be the most watched boxing event in modern boxing history. That kind of, I'm not going to lie to you, that kind of makes me sad. According to this report from Mark Raimondi of ESPN, he says it's unclear how Texas will regulate this. It is yet to be determined, he writes, whether it will be classified as a professional fight or an exhibition. Mike Tyson will be 58 when they fight. Jake Paul will be 27. Tyson last fought Roy Jones in November of 2020, and his team is putting out some social media training videos with Iron Mike looking pretty good in training videos. He has not fought an official bout since 2005. It was stopped after just 2 rounds. So I don't know. And as we bring Elijah back in, I don't know, Elijah. It seems like this is really just about making a lot of money. Not really about growing the sport of boxing, but I might be missing something.
Yeah, I'd say you're right. Yeah, I'd say this is 100% about making just gobs of money because Mike Tyson's name is on it, and that someone who is maybe a little more popular, like you mentioned, our demographic of under 40 and those that are on YouTube a lot. I think that they're trying to blend 2 demographics here to be able to make a ton of money. I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, Mike Tyson looks good in training videos, but like, is he actually in boxing shape? Is he actually going to look like not slow in a ring? Like, we'll see. I would, if I didn't have to pay for it, I would watch out of curiosity. But I don't think I would use my own money to actually watch this. I might just watch like a replay that someone puts on YouTube itself. But again, out of curiosity, but it's definitely not for the growth of the sport.
I hope those of you who don't know me very well yet understand how facetious I was being when I talked about that. Mike Tyson's camp has put out a statement attributed to Mike that says Jake Paul has grown significantly as a boxer over the years, so it will be a lot of fun to see what the will and ambition of a kid can do with the experience and aptitude of a GOAT. It's a full circle moment that will be beyond thrilling to watch. As I started him on his boxing journey on the undercard of my fight with Roy Jones, and now I plan to finish him. That's a statement from Iron Mike Tyson.
That's a hell of a statement because it started off with sounded like they were going to team up to be the super friends to combine their two different strengths, and then it circles back around to I'm going to finish him. It didn't make a ton of sense.
I have Netflix, and I'll probably be around that night. I guess that's a Saturday night, and I'm not going to watch that. I don't. I mean, A, I don't know who Jake Paul is, so I don't care enough. And B, Mike Tyson's older than me, dude. Unless you're playing golf, you shouldn't really be going out there and doing something like this at that age, in my opinion.
This is drastically different. Yeah, a little different than golf, too.
But if you're into this, it's cool. And then listen, when I was in high school and college, Mike Tyson was, man, I get it. That was a long time ago. Netflix, July the 20th, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. But at least I gave it some pub here for him. So you're welcome, Jake, Mike, and Netflix. Those are your integrated media headlines of the day, brought to you by our good friends at Integrated Media. I got to tell you, by the way, Integrated Media, now's a great time for you to check things out for an outdoor system, more affordable than ever before. Enjoy South Carolina's beautiful weather, your favorite sporting events, or maybe even not so favorite sporting events like boxing exhibitions against an old dude and a young dude. Your call, 803-948-8327. Call Integrated Media today for all of your home theater and home security needs. More from Elijah's perspective on last night's Carolina game. See if he agrees with me. Is the easiest way for Carolina to get to the quarterfinal round to open conference play or conference tournament play by having Kentucky lose. You are listening to the postgame show. All right. Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1. Another traffic update for you here across the Midlands of South Carolina on this Thursday afternoon. We've got Highway 1 at Pisgah Church Road, Kaiser at Mission Way, Gervais at Millwood, not too far from downtown. In downtown, Lady Street at Assembly Street. Be careful through there, please. And another major thoroughfare, Park Lane at Two Notch, still being worked on at last check. Cloudy and 70 degrees right now. This is your WIS traffic. All right, one more check of traffic for you here on this Thursday afternoon. Highway 1 at Pisgah Church Road. We've got Kaiser at Mission Way. Park Lane at Two Notch still being worked on at last check. Major artery through the northeast part of town. And here in downtown Columbia, Lady Street at Assembly Street. And just a few blocks away, Gervais at Millwood. Please be careful through all those areas. All right, welcome back into the post-game show on this Thursday. Jay Phillips and Elijah Campbell with you. Yours truly in downtown Columbia's Herndon Chevy Studios. Elijah at Bon Secours Wellness Arena in downtown Greenville. He's up there for the weekend's action of the SEC tournament. The Gamecocks will get their tourney underway tomorrow. We'll have airtime of 11:30. Tip time is just past noon. The Gamecocks taking on Texas A&M. Meanwhile, we'll spend some more time talking about last night's Carolina-Tennessee men's basketball game. The Volunteers winning the outright SEC championship last night. A win would have kept Carolina in the hunt through the weekend. And so now, Elijah, you know, we begin to turn our attention towards, as Coach Paris has pointed out, and we've played the comment a couple of times, the other milestones that are there. And one of them is certainly the double bye that you and I have been talking about for well over a month. And there was a time, and it's interesting because it still could very well happen, where we thought, you know, if you can go to 12-6, you should feel really good about the opportunity to get that double bye. And if you do finish 12-6, there is that real possibility. You know, again, if those of you who've just tuned in, before I let Elijah comment on this, Bama, Auburn, Carolina, Kentucky, all currently 12-5. That's 4 teams for 3 slots. Somebody that's having a great year is going to be on the outside looking in and start their tournament on Thursday. If all 4 of them win, the team on the outside is South Carolina, based on a very long and convoluted tiebreaker system that measures a collective head-to-head. Carolina would be on the outside looking in of that. Bama and Auburn have home games against inferior opponents. They should be heavily expected to win. Carolina and Kentucky are on the road, and they are pretty heavy underdogs. Kentucky's at Tennessee, South Carolina at Mississippi State. So, again, Elijah, Gamecock fans, do the easy thing here. You're pulling for Kentucky to lose. That way, it doesn't matter what the Gamecocks do. It would simply come down to Carolina versus Kentucky head-to-head. Carolina owns that one. That's the simple solution. Everything else makes my head hurt.
Yep, absolutely. Here's a simple cheering guide. So the game against Mississippi State on Saturday is at 2:30. The Tennessee-Kentucky game is at 4. So you'll have an hour and a half of looking at how the South Carolina-Mississippi State game is going. And, you know, if it's looking pretty good with half the game left, you don't have to worry about 4 o'clock. But if you lose to Mississippi State, then you're going to have to suck it up and cheer for Tennessee for a night if you want that double bye. Now, maybe not everyone wants the double bye, but you know what? I would prefer, if I'm a Gamecock fan, to start my tournament in the quarterfinal instead of having to earn my way to the quarterfinal. Because anything can happen in this goofy tournament. That's how basketball tournaments work. Your easiest way is to win or just have Kentucky lose. And your cheering guide will dictate that, you know, if things are going poorly in the Mississippi State game, if you're down by like 10 with a couple of minutes left, then you're going to have to bank on Dalton Connect and the Vols taking care of Kentucky for you, which is not impossible, but you're going to have to rely on that. So the easiest way is just A, take care of business, and B, your break in case of emergency plan here is going to be Tennessee taking care of business against Kentucky. Yeah,
because, again, I just, like I said, if all 4 of those schools that we mentioned that are sitting on 12 wins right now win their games on Saturday to all get to 13, then Carolina is the loser, if you will, despite winning the basketball game. So let's jump into that a little bit. We'll have more of a breakdown on this game tomorrow. And, again, Coach Paris will be on tonight, so he'll have more things to say about his team. But right now, Elijah, the ESPN BPI says let's round up and down a little bit, 74% to 26% in favor of Mississippi State. These two teams saw one another to open conference play. The Gamecocks especially were very different, but State was different then too, in terms of both schools bringing guys back in from injury or illness, as it were. You know, so when you open play and close play with a team, it almost feels like a whole season has been played in between.
Yeah, it really has. You know, especially like with Mississippi State, they're still trying to figure things out with Tolu Smith, who's an all-SEC caliber big man. And I wouldn't say that, you know, Tolu's had quite the same year as he did last year. Still very effective, still one of the better defensive bigs in the SEC. offensively, this Mississippi State team is better than they were at the beginning of the year. I think they've actually made some improvements. Josh Hubbard, the guard, who almost single-handedly beat Kentucky when they played in that thrilling game a couple weeks ago, has kind of emerged as the go-to guy as a freshman. He's one of the better freshmen. He'll be on that all-SEC, all-freshman team. He has been a big revelation for him because, before the January 6th game, it was all about, they played great defense, but they don't get a lot of scoring on the perimeter. They have to play a pound the air out of the ball, low post style basketball game to generate offense. They don't have to do that as much now, or at least they don't have to rely on that as much now, just because Hubbard has actually given them something, and that takes a lot of pressure off Shaquille Moore, who is having a better three-point shooting season, and Deshaun Davis, who can hit a three when spotting up, but it alleviates some of the pressure from their guards. They've gotten, I would say offensively, they've gotten a little better. They've gotten a little worse defensively because they were a top 10 defensive unit going into the game a couple of months ago. Still good, hovering around the top 20, but not as dominant. So they're definitely, the scouting reports can look a smidge different, but overall, they're still a same brand of basketball. But they just relied on different guys to be able to get their offense now, which is kind of varies. The offense is kind of the most inconsistent part of that team.
Well, one of the things that Carolina's been fantastic with all season long has been their defense. And last night they held Tennessee to less than 36% shooting from the floor, despite the fact that the Vols went on to win the game. Here's Coach Lamont Paris on his team's defensive effort.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're a good team. They're going to get some things done. When I look back at it, here's what I'll look at. I'll really try to get to the bottom of some transition situations. Why did those happen? I know they got some stuff in transition. I don't know how many points, but in the first half they had some transition stuff. What was the root of that? Could we have controlled some of that? My guess is that we could have. I'll look at some of our defensive responsibilities and just a couple rules, and I know we violated some rules defensively. I think ultimately for me it boils down to that. I really want to look at the things that we could have controlled. Were there enough of those that could have impacted the game? And I think without a doubt the answer is yes. They got some stuff inside. They're aggressive. They ducked in there. They got some threes also. They have a good team. But, I mean, all said and done, overall from a defensive standpoint, the body of it, we talked about it before. Dalton Connect had, what was it, 26 points on how many field goal attempts?
23.
On 23. Yeah, I can't control who shoots on there, but that's a number that I like, honestly. And someone's going to write, Dalton Connect had 23 as they win the conference championship. But honestly, those numbers are probably where I want a prolific scorer to be. 25, 6 points on 23 shots. So it just was some other stuff. Honestly, it came down to some other stuff. And some of it was, we were excited, and maybe that made it a little harder for us to stick to the script on a couple of defensive things. You want to make a play. And honestly, sometimes the play is kind of hidden out there, and it's just being solid is the play. But guys want to make a play. They want to get a steal. They want to block a shot. They want to make a spectacular play. And I think that led to a couple of things where generally we've been a little more solid than that.
A long cut there from Lamont, but illustrates what he feels about defense. And, Elijah, he's echoing a point that you made earlier. South Carolina can live with Dalton Connect scoring 26 points on 23 attempts. They did a nice job. They made him shoot to earn those points. And as Lamont said, a headline might be Connect scores 26 as Vols clinch title, but he said he's okay with that. The transition things, he wants to see what more they can do. And, he also made a point that I think is an interesting one, that they were excited last night being at home, and you wonder how much they temper that enthusiasm on the road against Mississippi State.
Yeah, they'll have to embrace the opposite energy that the crowd will be giving them against Mississippi State. It'll be a lot more hostile than friendly like it was the other night. And defensively, the best way to be able to control that is to be able to make them go through long field goal droughts or stretches without points. They're going to have to string together some of those. And they did a good job of doing that to Tennessee. I have no doubt they'll be able to at least hold Mississippi State to under 70 points.
Yeah.
They're just going to have to be able to get the big shots on the road.
Drive around the SEC is next. If you had a pool in your backyard, you could jump in it on a day like this. You know, nice skies in the 70s. If you don't have one, now is a great time for you to call the pros at Pete Alewine Pool and Spa. You know, they're the Midland's leader in in-ground vinyl, fiberglass, gunite swimming pool design and installation. And listen, once it's done, they don't just walk away from you. Because you see, they don't just build swimming pools, they service existing ones, weekly pool cleanings, equipment repair and upgrades. Maybe you have a vinyl pool, getting a little faded, time for a new liner. They can do that for you. Check them out, 5541 Sunset Boulevard. They'll even provide you with a free water test. You can take a water sample in. They'll make sure that your pool stays nice and clean all year long. Again, 5541 Sunset Boulevard in Lexington, across from Walmart. Always online at PeteAlewinePools.com. Like the two beverages, ale and wine, it's Pete Alewine Pool and Spa. And again, invite Elijah and me over to jump in. All right, so got a few of them out there for you on this Thursday afternoon, especially as folks are leaving the office and heading back home to jump in that pool that we talked about earlier. Gervais at Millwood, not too far from where I am currently sitting. Please be careful if you're there. Kaiser at Mission Way, and also not too far from where I'm sitting, Lady Street at Assembly Street is still out at last check. Plus, some heavy traffic heading north out of Bull Street and over on 126. Y'all know the drill here in downtown Columbia. Cloudy and 69 now. Be safe out there. I don't want to have to talk about you the next time I have to do one of these things because, that's not fun. You're probably hungry, ready to get home. Be careful. And so we start with basketball. Last night, we talked a lot today about Tennessee's victory over South Carolina, as the Volunteers clinched the outright SEC championship. It's their first outright title since 2008, and I think the first share of a title, Elijah, since 2018. So for all the good that Rick Barnes has done, it's been a little while since Tennessee's hit the top of the mountain in the SEC. It's their 11th, either outright or shared Southeastern Conference championship. More from you, Elijah, on this team. And I suppose maybe take us through a little bit of the question I'm going to ask you and the answer you give us through the perspective of a Carolina fan, but looking at Tennessee also at the same time from sort of that 30,000-foot view. It's a really good basketball team. Carolina beat them in Knoxville and played them tight last night, was within 3 points with a minute and a half to go in the ball game. But how good is this Tennessee basketball team when you're looking at, say, the top 10 teams in the country right now?
They certainly belong, I would say, in that top 5 conversation. The resume itself speaks to give them a number 1 seed in this tournament, give them the 4th one. But when you talk about what can be sustainable, what they do really well, and they've done this the last 4 or 5 years of the Rick Barnes era, is that they guard at an elite level. They do a really good job of making teams shoot really difficult shots and low percentages, and that alone wins you a lot of games. But they also turn teams over at a high rate. Defensively, they have somebody like Jemai Meshack, who might be the best on-ball defender in the SEC, and that way you can Rick can use him as a chess piece really out there on the floor. And they're so versatile because they do also have a 6'11", 7-foot big in Jonas Adu, who's a really good rim protector and a really good offensive rebounder. The problem the last few years, because they've had these guys like Adu, Meshack, Ziegler, Vescovy, James. They've been the core of the team for at least 3 years for all of them together. Vescovy and James have been around since Allen Houston was there. But I think the difference this year is Dalton Connect, because you haven't had a go-to scorer. If you go back a couple years ago to the Michigan game between Tennessee and Michigan in the second round of the NCAA tournament, where 2-seed Tennessee got beat by a 7-seed in Michigan. That Michigan team, or it might even have been a 10, that Michigan team didn't do anything spectacular. They just took away passing lanes and made guys like Vescovy and James and Ziegler beat them one-on-one on the dribble, and they couldn't do it. Nobody could create shots for themselves. It's a very team-oriented offense, and it still is now, but nobody could create their own shot that was a high-percentage one. With Dalton Connect, you can give him the ball, clear it out, or get a mismatch like in the Auburn game. That's basically all they did was mismatch hunt. Anytime that Janai Broom got switched on to Dalton Connect, you would see Dalton Connect use his other arm away from the ball and shoo a screener away so you can go one-on-one. You can take him to the basket, pull it from 15 feet, or in one instance, just shoot from 30. And he is such a good shooter at multiple different parts of the floor that late in games when things get really, really tight, they don't go through those 7-8 minute stretches without buckets like they have the last previous years. So they found a missing piece in the transfer portal that can take them from a really good basketball team that had a ceiling of Sweet 16, Elite 8 to this is the best chance of a Final Four they've had since the Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield year.
Yeah, Vescovy is an interesting case study and a guy that was so vital for them, and I don't mean this in a negative way towards him at all or a judgment, but he's become the standard role player, and that's I think that illustrates that final point that you just made about how much better Tennessee has gotten somewhat unexpectedly with Knecht coming in and doing what he's done. Tennessee, again, has Kentucky coming up on Saturday afternoon at Thompson-Boling. Kentucky has won 4 straight. As I mentioned earlier, they have won those 4 straight with the least amount of points being 91. They've gone over 100 twice, and last night they scored 93 in beating Vanderbilt by a final of 93-77. Want to come back around to them in just a second. Arkansas won last night 94-83 at home over LSU. Arkansas travels to Alabama. And last night, Texas A&M keeps their tournament hopes alive with a 75-69 win over Mississippi State. A bubble game battle there, Elijah. Obviously, A&M needed the win probably more than Mississippi State, but how anxious are the Bulldogs when they host the Gamecocks after losing last night?
Yeah, pretty anxious. And the worst part is the South Carolina game becomes more of a can't lose, like you like to say, because South Carolina's net ranking is still 47. That is not a quad 1 win for Mississippi State. Mississippi State only has 3 of those on the year, and they're 4-2 in the second quadrant. A loss to South Carolina makes them 4-3 in quad 2, and that also makes them 7-11 in the first 2 quadrants. While 7 wins solid, the committee will frown upon the 11 quad 1 and 2 losses, and of course they have that early season quad 4 loss to Southern. That is not just like a black eye. That's like a black, 2 eyes, I guess, like getting punched twice in the face, and then showing up to the party. It also doesn't help too that they don't win a lot of games away from home. Jay, would you like to guess the amount of games they have won at another team's home court?
3.
You're close, but you shot over just a little bit. 2. They are 2-8 in true road games, and one of the things that the head of the committee said on CBS earlier this year was that the committee values wins away from home, and they're going to use that as a determining factor for picking a lot of teams. And when you're 2-8 in true road games like Mississippi State is, it's not looking really good for you, especially against teams you're supposed to beat. Like, yes, Texas A&M came into the season with a high preseason ranking. They're not a very good basketball team. Losing that game, especially considering they were down big early, isn't going to be a good look. The net ranking being in the top 40 helps to a degree, but ultimately you're going to have to win the games on the floor, not just the ones on paper. A loss to South Carolina is going to be a pretty tough addition to the quad 2 losses that they have already.
What should Tennessee fear most about this Kentucky team in its current state? Again, scoring a lot of points.
They need to fear the run, like the ultimate, bleep you run that Kentucky can go on offense, where they hit 3 or 4 threes in a span of 2 minutes, or they get out in transition, they get you in a track meet, and while they can't stop you in a half-court setting, they're big enough to get maybe 3 stops in a row, and in those 3 stops in a row, hit 3 threes. A 9-0 run with this Kentucky team can happen, in the blink of an eye. They have that type of spurt ability, and they have that ceiling on offense because anytime, Reed Shepherd is on the floor, anytime Rob Dillingham is on the floor, they can knock down threes. DJ Wagner gets to the rim whenever he wants on anybody because he's incredibly quick. They're finally fully healthy, so Trey Mitchell can, stretch the floor a little bit, which might be able to pull Jonas Adu away from the basket. But the spurt ability of Kentucky is really the biggest concern. If I'm Tennessee, you don't want them getting out in transition a ton, and you don't want them shooting a lot of open threes. I don't think Kentucky's going to be able to do that. In theory, yeah, that would give Kentucky a damn good chance to win this game. But I don't know if they're able to execute that as well because Tennessee is so good in their transition defense, and they are good enough at protecting the perimeter. We saw that last night. South Carolina had 17 of their first 31 shots from 3, because Tennessee forced them to shoot it, but they didn't get a lot of great looks in that first half. You're going to have to knock down. They're going to have to knock down Kentucky will the few open looks they're going to get against Tennessee in a hostile home environment. Thompson Bowling get pretty loud.
Yeah, definitely.
And that rivalry, it gets heated.
Especially when Kentucky's there. Real quick, you want to go to Carolina Longwood Sunday afternoon baseball? Caller 5-803-404-6100. We're going to tell you what Fox is going to replace wrestling with on Friday nights after this. 11 minutes in front of 6 o'clock on this Thursday. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of the postgame show. Carolina Calls coming your way after us. Reminder, tomorrow morning, 11:30 airtime. Gamecock women's basketball broadcast with Brad Muller on the call. Noon tip, give or take. You know, TV will have their say first. So a little bit afternoon is when we'll tip it off. Full postgame coverage. And then Elijah and I will take over with Elijah on hand up in Greenville tomorrow afternoon. Also want to remind you real quick here to go to 1075thegame.com and register for the Palmetto Citizens Grand Slam giveaway. Every game, Palmetto Citizens will add $25 to the pot, and if a Carolina hitter hits a Grand Slam, you will win all of that cash, so long as you're entered and, you know, you're the one they draw. Right now, the pot is at $275, which means it'll go to $300 tomorrow, and so on and so forth. And let's face it, Carolina's had a lot of dudes on base. So, you know, an opportunity there for a Grand Slam potentially this weekend. But they are leaving some guys on base and need to work on that. But you can help yourself out. Again, go register right now or soon when you can at 1075thegame.com. So, you know, look, I'm going to sound like an old fuddy-duddy here, and I apologize in advance, sort of. Fox Sports has announced today that they will now have college football every Friday night during the season. They have not renewed their contract with WWE to televise Friday Night SmackDown. Fox is paying a lot of money for college football rights. And according to Andrew Marchand, who is now writing for The Athletic, he says Fox executives believe the college game will produce higher ratings than the WWE. The difference is WWE was a year-round event. And college football, of course, is about, 3 or 4 months, give or take. The games will be either ones featured from the Big Ten, Big 12, or Mountain West. But they will happen every single night on Fridays. They'll still have their Big Noon Saturday contest. It'll be their biggest game of the week, the Big Noon Kickoff. They want to have the number one college football game on Friday and Saturday, so they say. And, of course, they're doing pretty well with that NFL thing on Sundays. Marchand also writes the extension of college football into a regular Friday primetime broadcast means that in the fall, the top NFL and college games will be featured every night of the week except Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, of course, ESPN has televised MACtion during those games, during those nights. My question here, if Fox is going to do this, how does Disney respond? Look, they're already doing some Friday night football from time to time. I think the ACC plays on Fridays. Clemson's even had a couple of Friday games. But do they want to try, what's ABC doing right now, I guess is the question I'm leading up to. Do you want to try and go toe-to-toe to eat into what Fox is going to do on a Friday night? I feel badly, but it's just too late. This is where I was going to be the old fuddy-duddy. I feel badly for high school football because, you can't put a high school game on Friday night in some national broadcast window and hope for that to do anything meaningful. It's really cool for those kids in those schools, and there may be a few people here or there that are interested in some massive kind of game. If Matter Day out of California is going to play an IMG or something, yeah, you'll get a couple million people to watch. But if it's a couple of schools in Texas or a couple of schools in Chicago or something like that, yeah, right? Listen, a lot of us will still go to Friday night high school football and not watch these college games, but plenty of people won't. But does that keep people home if your school is playing, if your alma mater is playing on a Friday night? I get it, so I'm not really here to complain and say, why would they do this? I know why they're doing it, but it's just illustrative, I suppose, in some way of the ever-evolving landscape of what we're doing with sports on television, which is still really television's number one live moneymaker, that and the news. That's it, right? We can stream everything else pretty much whenever we want to or get it on demand, depending on how you watch your television. But Fox is moving on from wrestling and is going to bank on football in the fall. What they do the rest of the time, I don't know. Guess we'll see. So there you go. And again, what does Disney do with ESPN and ABC to follow suit? Because my gut tells me they'll do something. Appreciate Brad Muller's time, Jack Veltri for Elijah up in Greenville, and Ed Bird at Master Control. Appreciate you guys being with us. Good to be back in the saddle after a few days away. Do it all again tomorrow to get you ready for the weekend. Be safe. See you. And one last note before we get out of here, and it's about our friends at AAA Heating and Air. Listen, I've told you for a long time now, and you can pretty much, the heating and air, right? Kind of speaks for itself. They're great at what they do. Roy and Dana Finley now want you to know that the amount of great service they provide when it comes to your HVAC systems is now being applied to professional and residential electrical services. This includes things like panel upgrades, lighting installation all around your home or business, generator installation. You may have seen some dude on TV talking about that. They do repairs on those kinds of things as well. Plus, of course, now that we're getting ready to get into the warm weather months here, which last a long time, make sure your system is good to go. Get a free upgrade estimate at callAAAtoday.com, or if you need service or anything else, 803-677-1500. Electrical, HVAC, and so much more with my good friends at AAA Heating and Air. All right, one more check of traffic for you here on this Thursday afternoon. Highway 1 at Pisgah Church Road. We've got Kaiser at Mission Way. Park Lane at 2 Notch still being worked on at last check. Major artery through the northeast part of town. And here in downtown Columbia, Lady Street at Assembly Street. And just a few blocks away, Gervais at Millwood. Please be careful through all those areas.